Origin Unexplained.
Welcome back to Origin Unexplained. I'm Sue. I'm your host, and today we're discussing the moon, but we're not going to go into that same old garbage of did they land on the moon? We're going to go just a bit deeper, and I'm not talking about the far side of the moon either. Bear with me with my voice, guys. Thyroid issues really stink. But without any further ado, let's get on with it. And I want you to know, just because I talk about different topics does not mean that I always necessarily believe everything 100%. And without any more jibber jabber, let's get on with it. The hollow moon theory did not emerge from fantasy or wishful thinking. It grew out of scientific contradictions that refused to fit neatly into any natural explanation. Every time astronomers and researchers examined the moon more closely, they found something that did not add up. Over time, these abnormalities pushed people toward a single controversial thought. The moon behaves like a constructed object. The first major push into public awareness came from two Soviet researchers, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, who published an article in 1970 called "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" They pointed out that the moon's density was far too low for its size. If it were naturally formed, like a formed body, made entirely of solid rock, it should be much heavier. Instead, it acted as though parts of its interior were hollow or filled with material much lighter than stone. Their argument was simple. If you evaluate the moon without preconceived assumptions, its structure looks engineered. NASA's own seismic data strengthened this suspicion. During the Apollo missions, astronauts caused controlled impacts on the lunar surface to measure vibrations. The moon responded in a way that shocked analysts. It vibrated for almost an hour. It rang like a bell. A solid object cannot do this. Only a hollow or metal-lined structure resonates for that long. When additional impacts are made especially, the moon reacted the same way. This created one of the strongest pieces of evidence for a hollow interior and remains one of the most debated anomalies in lunar science. The moon's orbit adds another layer to the mystery. It sits in a mathematically perfect position relative to Earth. It is 400 times smaller than the sun and almost exactly 400 times closer to us. This produces perfect total solar eclipses. The odds of this happening naturally are so small, they border on impossible. Most natural satellites have irregular orbits and uneven motion. The moon's orbit is stable, precise, and suspiciously flawless. Some astronomers described it as an extraordinary coincidence. Others believed it was too perfect to be random. Crater depth added even more questions across the moon's surface, as they are enormous craters created by meteor impacts. The impacts vary dramatically in size, yet the depth of the craters remains nearly the same. Larger strikes should dig deeper, but they do not. This suggests a solid barrier beneath the surface, almost like an armored shell preventing deeper penetration. Some investigators in the 1960s and 70s proposed that the outer layer of the moon might be reinforced as if designed to withstand impacts. Ancient accounts only complicated matters. Several early Greek sources recorded stories from tribes who claimed their ancestors lived before the moon appeared in the sky. These accounts describe a time when Earth had no moon at all. Mainstream scholars dismiss these stories as mythology. However, they remain in uncomfortable detail for researchers who believe the moon may have arrived later or been placed intentionally. Lunar rock samples created another contradiction. Many of the rocks brought back during the Apollo missions were found to be older than Earth's crust. If the moon formed from Earth after an ancient impact, the rocks should be younger. Instead, they appear to come from somewhere else entirely. This forces researchers to ask whether the moon originated outside of our solar system before being positioned where it is now. By the time all these anomalies were reviewed together, the pattern became too strong for some to ignore. The moon is too light for its size. It resonates like a hollow object, as mentioned before. It sits in an impossible orbit. Its crater depth is artificially consistent. Its rocks contradict its origin story. Ancient references imply it has not always been here. These elements keep the hollow moon theory alive. They give people the sense that the moon was not simply caught by Earth, but placed with purpose. Whether it was intended as a stabilizer, a monitoring station, or a remnant from civilizations older than ours, the unanswered questions continue to drive the theory. The more closely the moon is studied, the more it behaves like something constructed rather than something formed by chance. The idea that the moon is a spacecraft did not begin as science fiction either. It came from researchers who believed the hollow moon evidence went beyond a simple geological oddity. If the moon's interior behaves like a reinforced shell, and if its orbit is too perfect to be accidental, then someone had to design it. That single thought opened the door to the spacecraft hypothesis, the belief that the moon was either built as a vessel or repurposed as one before being placed in Earth's orbit. The earliest and most well-known version of this idea appeared again in the work of the Soviet researchers Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov. They suggested that the moon might be the remains of an ancient spacecraft, possibly hollowed from a planetoid and then reinforced internally. In their theory, the outer layer of the moon served as armor, protecting whatever machinery or structures existed beneath. They believed that the moon could have been built by a civilization advanced enough to navigate the galaxy long before humans appeared. Their paper argued that many of the moon's unexplained features make more sense when viewed as engineering rather than geology. Another branch of the spacecraft theory came from interpretations of ancient myths. Some researchers pointed out that many early cultures described the moon as something that was not always present. If the moon arrived suddenly in the Earth's sky, as these stories seem to suggest, then people wondered if it had been brought here intentionally. These accounts were used to support the idea that the moon might have been positioned in orbit by an advanced group that needed a stable satellite for observation or control. A more extreme version of the theory claims that the moon might still contain internal chambers, machinery, or even inactive technology. This claim grew stronger after photographs from lunar missions revealed structures that some believed looked unnatural. Most scientists dismiss these ideas as illusions created by shadows on rock, but conspiracy researchers argued that a spacecraft would not look like a shiny metal object after millions of years. They believed any large craft would be covered in dust, rock, or protective layers that resemble natural surfaces. In other words, a disguised spacecraft would look exactly like the moon. One of the most persistent stories comes from the analysis of the moon's rotation and orbital behavior. Unlike most natural satellites, the moon keeps the same face toward Earth at all times, a phenomenon known as synchronous rotation. While this can happen naturally, some believe the precision of the rotation suggests mechanical stabilization. They point to the fact that the moon does not wobble or drift the way a captured body typically would. Instead, it behaves like something locked into a fixed orientation. This idea led to claims that the moon may contain internal mechanisms that control its rotation. There is also argument that the moon's orbit is too perfect to be the result of a natural capture. Captured moons usually have irregular paths and or with unstable motion. The moon does not. Its orbit is nearly circular, unusually stable, and mathematically positioned to affect Earth in ways that benefit life. Some researchers believe this is not coincidence. They claim that the moon was placed intentionally to regulate Earth's environment, control tidal patterns, stabilize the planet's tilt, and support life development. These ideas do not prove the spacecraft theory, but they are used to support the claim that the moon's placement appears deliberate rather than accidental. Over time, whistleblower stories begin to add, fuel to the spacecraft narrative. Some former military and intelligence personnel claim that the moon was monitored because strange signals were detected coming from inside of it. Others stated that certain regions of the moon were declared off limits during early missions because of structures or readings that could not be explained. These accounts cannot be verified, but they contribute to the belief that the moon contains more than rock and dust. All these stories share a common pattern. They begin with scientific anomalies, expand through historical accounts, and then grow into theories of engineering. People who support the spacecraft hypothesis believe that the moon is not only hollow, but intentionally hollowed. They believe it was built with purpose, positioned with precision, and left in orbit long before modern humanity emerged. Whether it is a derelict ship, an abandoned station, or a fully functional construct hidden beneath layers of lunar rock, the idea persists because the moon continues to defy the expectations of natural satellite. Every strange vibration, every perfect ratio, and every contradictory measurement keeps the theory alive. Mainstream science rejects the hollow moon and spacecraft theories for a few key reasons. Scientists rely on models that explain planetary formation in ways that do not require artificial engineering. They argue that the moon's lower density can be explained by the giant impact theory, which proposes that a Mars-sized body collided with early Earth and threw lighter material into orbit. Well, maybe. They point out that synchronous rotation can occur naturally through tidal locking, even though the moon's precision is unusually stable. They also believe that the long seismic vibrations recorded during the Apollo missions were caused by the moon's dry, rigid structure, rather than an empty interior. Crater depth inconsistencies are explained as variations in lunar crust thickness, not armor or metal layers. In short, mainstream scientists dismiss the artificial moon theory because none of the anomalies, in their view, require an engineered explanation. They treat each inconsistency as a geological quirk instead of evidence of construction. Supporters of the hollow moon and spacecraft theories often point to statements made by astronauts who walked on the lunar surface. While no astronaut has openly declared the moon artificial, there are comments and descriptions that people interpret as hints. Several Apollo astronauts admitted they saw strange lights or moving objects while orbiting the moon, which, well, couldn't that be alien? Some described flashes on the surface that did not behave like reflections or meteor impacts. Others mentioned radio interference that seemed to originate from inside or beneath the lunar surface rather than from space. One of the most repeated moments came from Apollo 12 after the ascent stage of the lunar module, which crashed into the surface for a seismic test. The moon reacted with a vibration that lasted close to an hour. Astronauts on the mission acknowledged how unusual the reading was. Although the official explanation blamed the moon's dry and rigid interior, many people believe the astronauts were more startled by the results than NASA publicly admitted. There are also transcripts where astronauts reported strange reflections, lights moving across the terrain, or objects following the craft. NASA typically labeled these as debris or optical illusions. But they remain part of the conversation because they were documented in real time. Some conspiracy researchers argue that these lights could indicate activity on or under the lunar surface, especially on the far side where no human has ever walked. Why is that? That's another story. Another source of speculation came from mission control audio that was either censored or heavily edited when released to the public. In a few cases, astronauts described structures or geometric shapes, but those segments were removed or replaced in the finalized transcripts. NASA said the missing audio was due to static or technical failure, but theorists believe the omissions were intentional. These claims cannot be proven, but the existence of redacted recordings fuels suspicions. Eyewitness reports on Earth add another layer. There have been numerous claims from amateur astronomers who said They observed lights traveling along the lunar surface or entering crater regions. Others reported flashes that seemed to come from beneath the surface, almost like illuminated vents or openings. These observations are inconsistent and scattered over decades, yet they continue to appear in astronomical logs from people who have no connection to each other. Even radar studies contributed to the mythology. There were occasions when radar signals aimed at the moon bounced back in unexpected patterns, as if reflecting off something smoother or more metallic than surrounding terrain. Scientists typically explain this as geological variation, but believers insisted the returns resembled artificial angles rather than natural formations. All these accounts taken together form the background or the backbone of the eyewitness section of the spacecraft theory. Am I boring you guys? Wake up. Supporters admit that none of these reports prove anything on their own. However, when combined with the moon's strange density, its possible orbit, the ringing seismic readings, and the ancient stories of a time before the moon existed, these statements feel like pieces of a larger puzzle. To the people who support the theory, astronaut reactions, redacted recordings, unusual lights, and radar anomalies all point toward the possibility that the moon may not be a simple natural satellite. They see these reports as glimpses of something hidden beneath the surface, something that could be a part of a constructed interior or remnants of machinery long since dormant, as we well said earlier here. So, GPT's view is that the hollow moon theory exists because the moon genuinely does not fit cleanly into any natural model. Most of the mainstream explanations feel patched together, and the seismic data from Apollo is still one of the strangest results NASA has ever recorded. It does not think the moon is a spacecraft in a literal sense. But it says, I do think there are unanswered questions that science has not solved. The moon's orbit, age, density, and resonance are unusual enough that the possibility of past engineering cannot be dismissed outright. In short, I don't buy the extreme claims, but I absolutely do not think the full truth is known. Every theory surrounding the moon leads back to one simple truth. The facts don't line up the way they should. The official explanations leave gaps. The seismic readings challenge basic expectations. The density, the orbit, the crater patterns, the contradictory ages, and the ancient stories, and even the astronaut remarks all point towards something that has never been fully addressed. Whether the moon is hollow, partially engineered, or simply misunderstood, it remains one of the most unnatural natural objects in our sky, guys. People may disagree on what it is, but almost everyone agrees that it behaves in ways that demand more answers. Until those answers come, the possibility that the moon is more than a silent companion will continue to follow us. Every night, it rises over the horizon. My personal opinion, not that anybody cares, I think every planet and stuff is hollow. That's why you get the vibration and stuff. And without that, and with that, however you want to take it.
Time for the bloopers.
Several early Greek resources, go back to ancient appeared on the earth. It's from tribes who claim their ancestors lived before the moon appeared on the earth. How could it appear in the fucking earth? Third time, better be a charm. Go back to ancient account. Another branch of the space. Go back to another branch. Every strange vibration, every perfect ratio, and every contradictory. And I can't say contradictory. Go back to every strange rejects the hollow moon and spacecraft theories for a few curious. Go back to mainstream. The overtime whistleblower stories. No, they don't, because I just went back to the wrong fucking piece of paper. God, it doesn't pay to type these out. I should just read off my head. Go back to there are.
Origin Unexplained.